team. Post-lunch sessions, I'm going to draw sticks next year to get a pre-lunch session. Because the post-lunch sessions, they're always hard, man. Everybody's a little bit tired. So grab water, coffee. We're going to try and keep this a little bit upbeat. Those of you who've met me before, I am a little bit of a joker, and I probably do some dad jokes as well, randomly. The name is Joannique. I have been around for a while in the retail industry. And how did I get into rebates? Honestly, I don't even know how to explain to you I got into rebate. I've been in retail for 25 years. And when I came to Australia, I first worked for a discount retailer, not much rebates there. Then I came to David Jones 7 years ago. And part of my portfolio was I had to teach this rebate system. And I don't know, somehow by teaching the rebate system, people assumed I knew something about rebate. Honestly, I probably couldn't give you a good definition of rebate 7 years ago. But somehow I've now become this master of rebates in the industry, and I do like to share some knowledge in this space. What am I most proud of, though, of all my achievements in the last 25 years of my career, is the fact that I'm also known as the David Jones mum. So let's talk all things rebates. So the people who were here last year, I do a little bit of a recap on what we've done last year because it's built. It's giving foundation to what I am going to talk about today. So I'll give you a little bit of an introduction on David Jones for those few in the room that may not know David Jones. I'm sure there's not a lot of you. And then we're going to have a little bit of a history lesson in terms of what we've captured last year and what we spoke about, because it really is the foundation of then going into why governance is so important, even when you do have a really mature rebate strategy in place. So talking about David Jones, most of the people in this room would know that we've been around for 186 years. We are the oldest department store in the world still trading under its original trading name. I think that is something that we certainly are extremely proud of, and we certainly are an icon in the Australian space. Everybody knows David Jones. And even some of our friends from the States has done a little bit of a visit to David Jones. Rachel may or may not have bought some nice teas, and I think there was a pair of shoes that's been bought last night. We love all of these shoppers we get. But why am I talking about the history of David Jones? Look, 186 years, a long time to build really bad habits and to work in really archaic ways, but it's also a lot of time to consider and apply new processes, bring things into place. So we've had a little bit of time to think about all things rebate in this space. And we've actually been on a rebate system, so not just doing rebates, we've actually been on a rebate system with our friends at Perfectus since 2014. So in the Australian landscape, that is seen as quite a, we're a little bit ahead of the pack when it comes to rebate management. So we do believe that we've got a bit of a mature rebate management strategy in place already. But that's not the only thing David Jones is known for. Some other fun facts: we were the people that brought Chanel into Australia. So very, very long ago, there was a buyer at David Jones that said Chanel should come to Australia. And through David Jones, she got Chanel to come to Australia. More recently, we were the company that brought Skims into Australia. So we are the sole distributor of Skims in Australia. So it shows that we really understand what's going on in the market, we understand what's important in the market, and we really do try and service our brand partners and our customers as such. A little bit of context about David Jones. So for those in the room who knows David Jones, we are the house of brands. With a lot of brands come a lot of vendors. So we have over 950 active vendors, and these change because we lose vendors, we gain vendors, but it sits around that almost circa 1,000 mark quite consistently. Now, of the 950, about 170 of them is about 80% of our turnover. So we've got a very long tail to manage. And in the world of rebate, it becomes really hard if you need to do things manually if you've got a very long tail. Of the 950 vendors, we've got over 1,200 brand partners to deal with. So if you think about brand offers, bad promotional activity, launches, new store openings, all of those things creates opportunities for us in the world of rebates when we bring new brands on board, or even when we come to the end of a season and we need to cycle that old season stock to open up, the open to buy for the next season. So rebates really becomes a very big part of that conversation. Now, here's the good news story, I think. Of the 950 vendors that we've got 750 active vendor trading terms in place. As we stand today, well, that's a lie, as we stand at the 1st of August when I presented this back. With 120 of them, that is what we call in rollover phase. It's basically come to its end of life, and it needs to be renegotiated. So if you add all of that up, we almost have a one-on-one relationship for vendor trading term in place for every single vendor that we have in David Jones. And that's quite significant. And imagine having to manage that on a spreadsheet somewhere. I don't think we would be able to do it, to be quite honest, because the output of that 750 agreements is that we claim over 8,000 claims a year in David Jones. Period to date, when I prepped this, beginning of August, we've already claimed circa 6,000 claims, and we haven't hit our big trading periods, the next 5 months, as we probably make about 70% of our profit. So the big stuff is still coming. So you can see, first of all, an Excel spreadsheet, probably not going to be able to manage all of those agreements, what's in place, what's happening. And a spreadsheet would certainly not be able to manage 8,000 claims. It would be almost impossible to do that. Now, what does it look like in David Jones? I think we spoke about different rebate strategies before. We've spoken about a little bit of blunt knife instruments. We do have a little bit of a history. And probably, maybe it started in manufacturing, where it was quite a blunt instrument, where a percentage for something, and it was always the same, wasn't scalable, or there was not a lot of dual benefit in there. And we certainly do still have some of that. So that intake-based rebate, which is on the side there, is a percentage of volume intake. So it's a percentage on intake. And probably the bluntest knife that we do have in our drawer, if I have to be honest. But what's really good to see is that is on the decline, because we do understand where there's mutual benefit when it comes to rebates, something for something, you start shifting the dial in that partnerships and that negotiation, where if both people walk away, both parties walk away with a benefit, it becomes a much easier table to sit around with and negotiate. So certainly an increase in the space where there's something for something. Oh, and that's my very smart terminology for exchange, something for something. In that we do get promotional and clearance support, and you can see an increase in our retail media. So again, for those that is part of the Australian marketplace, you would know that David Jones has recently launched a Amplify media platform. It's effectively a second stream of income for David Jones. Our first target was obviously to our local partners and our local vendors, but this can be extended to external, non-trading partners with David Jones as well. So certainly an increase where there's something for something. So really revolutionizing that blunt knife to a strategic instrument where you get benefit for both parties. Now, what's really interesting, Andy, I'm going to use a little bit of what happened to us at Nora last week. We opened up the session with, what does rebate mean for you? And the first comment we got was eye gouging. Oh my gosh, where do we go from here? And there's like a gentleman who said that, and then he went like, yes, because if they do promotion and clearance, they want money from us. And then another lady, she said, yeah, why should you be paying for that clearance? I'm like, oh my gosh, it's going to be a tough hour to get through. But started explaining that if we think about David Jones as a model, David Jones buy from brands. We're not a vertical business. We don't create our own product. We don't go and sit in vendors and say, create this jean for us in this fit, in this color, with this waistline, with this wash, with this zipper, with this blah, blah, blah. We don't do that. We go to brands, we go and look at a range, we say, okay, Marc Jacobs, what have you got for us? Or Aish, what have you got for us? Or LMA, what have you got for us? They show us the range, and we go like, yep, love it. But at the end of the day, we don't have any input in that design. So when we buy the range from them, there may sometimes be, we go like, our customer just doesn't wear any magenta. What are we going to do? And they go like, no, you've got to buy magenta. Magenta is the color of the season. They're like, okay, but if it doesn't work, what then? And that's where that promotional monies and that clearance support really comes into play. Because if we're not selling the product at the rate we should be selling it, we're not going to have the OTB to buy the next range. So we're not going to be able to buy product back from you again. So it's that dual partnership of getting your product to customer, getting your product through end of life. Obviously, being a fashion industry, you've got a cycle. At the end of summer, when we go into winter, people want coats. They no longer want that perfect bikini, you know. So you've got to change your seasons all the time, and you've got to get a way of working through that. And that is where this partnership really comes into play, where that promo and clearance money plays a big role. And as we already spoke, the retail media platform, obviously really important for us. And as you can also see, there's something for both of those parties in that rebate structure. Now, some of the challenges, even with a robust strategy, did we get everything right? No, we didn't. Otherwise, we wouldn't have been friends with Perfectus to try and find some monies for us. So we did identify, or we do understand where our challenges are, and it really is around the lack of governance, probably one of the biggest ones. We've got a system, we kind of have a process, we kind of have a vendor trading term negotiation at some point, but what does governance look like in that space? Lack of consistency, we spoke about it. You said people are creative. Imagine fashion buyers, how creative they become when they go and do a negotiation. There's some crazy stuff that we sometimes need to figure out. Like, how are we going to claim this? Like, this doesn't even make sense. Lack of knowledge. People move on. People change roles. People resign. People retire. Vendors move on. You know, there's a constant change, and we spoke about some of those challenges earlier. Chris mentioned, you know, that turnover. People aren't, like, they're not loyal to the brand anymore. They're loyal to themselves. So that staff turnover is a huge issue if they don't know how to manage the rebates and make sure that there's continuity in that space. And that's silent financial leakage. Best things can be in place. If that agreement is sitting somewhere in a top drawer or in an email inbox and nobody loaded it into the system, nobody knows about it. We're not going to be able to claim it. Okay. So definitely challenge that we have identified before, and as I said, because we've been in this kind of since 2014, once again, had time to work on all of these things. So how do we overcome some of those challenges? And one of the big things is really to create consistencies. I'm the queen of consistency. That's my second name at David Jones. The first is David Jones' mum, and then queen of consistency. Because I need to do training, and it's so much easier to train something that's consistent than train something to say, yes, and if, and if, and if, and if. Like, nobody understands that and if statement. The answer is probably going to give an error. So organized rebate management really, really is such an important part of having a robust rebate strategy in place. And what does that look like? Being in a system, being recorded, having the ability to be able to pull it out, analyze it, understand it. So, you know, really having a rebate system does take you forward in such a big way. Regular audit cadence. It's all good and well to think everybody is doing the right thing. Most probably are, but some is not. Or again, we're going back to that staff turnover. I agree to mark down promotional support. I resigned, or I went on maternity leave, or I went on a 4-week European holiday, and by the time I came back, I forgot about it. These things happen, you know. So how do we make sure that we identify those financial leakage points? Having robust governance in place. We spoke about this. Governance is coming out and out again. It almost happens to be in my title, so you kind of see where the rest of the session may be going. And then employee training. Once again, bringing the technology, the processes, and the people together through all the aspects of all the tools that you have in your case, if that makes sense. So once again, it's great that you've got a system. It's great that you get audited. Great if you have governance in place, but if your people don't know how to do it or how to use the system or understand the process, you're probably going to fall flat as well. So that is a little bit of a recap of last year. I will take you quickly through what organized rebate management, audit cadence in employees looks like. It's another recap, but really the big focus for today is then going to be the governance. How am I in time? I'm just getting a thumbs up. Okay, cool. All right, so organized rebate management system. Again, a little bit of a recap of last year, so I may not spend too much time on this slide because I don't want to bore you, but what does it look like? System-generated claims is by far the easiest claim to collect because it's based on transactional data. You can't fight it, you can't argue it. The data set is there, the claim is based on the data. It's calculatable, it's factual. There is no ambiguity around it. So when you have a system that produces a claim for you based on a set of data that's been shared with our rebate partners, that's the spreadsheet that goes to the vendor. The vendor goes like, yeah, sure, can see the data is right, happy days. Everybody walks away happy, too easy. So that system-generated automation and transactional data really do go hand in hand with one another. So organized claim creation and tracking. How do I know what I need to claim? How do I know whether I have claimed it? How do I know whether I've banked it? Again, you can do it on Excel spreadsheet, sure. 8,000 claims, maybe not. So having a system that actually have all of this organized claims in the system makes it super, super easy to track. I call it the one-stop shop because it's also all your agreements we actually have in the system. So if a new person joins the business and go, oh, this happened. We had a new CFO that joined David Jones and said, hey, what vendor trading terms do we have in place? I went into the system 5 minutes later. I created a report for him to say, this is all the vendor trading terms per vendor that we have in place. Easy. It's stored in the system for us. Now, once you've got it in the system, you've got your documentation in there. You've got your approvals in there. It becomes an audit dream. It is so easy to be audited if you've got everything right there, rather than, again, like, gosh, which drawer did I put that signed paper in? I don't know, I can't remember. Oh, no, that person left the business. We don't have that signature anymore. So organized rebate management system. I call it a place for everything and everything for a place. And I may repurpose my joke of last year. I've been trying to teach my husband that for the last 25 years of our manage, and I've given up, so now I pay my energies and time on rebate management. It's easier. The one-stop shop. Now, regular audit cadence, what does that look like? I think most people have the formal audit, the audit that comes from the outside and everybody's shaking a little bit and go like, ooh, are we going to pass it? Am I going to be able to put on my performance review that I passed that audit? Everything is squeaky clean. And that's like, that, I call it the formal audit. In my head, I can think about that as the angry audit. But anyway, we're not going to say that on stage. So the formal audit is the one that most companies go through. Are your processes in place? Are you following your own processes? You know, are there dodgy things going on? And we probably all go through it. But what we've done at David Jones as well, partnered with our friends at Perfectus that we've had a relationship on since 2014, to do what I call a friendly audit. The friendly audit is basically taking, what's the buzzword of the day today, guys? AI. Put a lens on top of the emails that we share with Perfectus, on top of the rebate deals management system that's it with Perfectus, and our AP data, accounts payable data. So they take I, and they go like, oh, is there email floating around that's not in the system or not an AP? Yep, there it is. Pull it out, go, hey, Mrs. Buyer at David Jones, we found this deal. It's sat in so-and-so email. We can see it has not been claimed. Are you okay for us to go to the vendor? And go like, yes, please. Because it takes that kind of accountability or that conversation away from us at David Jones, especially if you missed it 6 months or 2 years ago. It's a little bit embarrassing, to be honest. So our friends at Perfectus actually goes out and do all of that negotiation for us, saying, I can see here's the evidence, you agree to it, I can see we never claimed to it, we're going to put this claim through. It's monies that was lost. Now what I am happy to report, Chris, and you were not lying earlier when he said David Jones is good. When I went to the business to pitch this, I gave them a really big number that we're going to find in financial leakage. And we probably came to about 10% of that number, which was a little bit sad for me because I promised them all this money. But good for the business because it shows we're doing something right if there's not a lot of money on the table that's being left behind. And to be fair, and I don't know, keep me honest here, Chris, but I think the biggest financial leakage that we're finding is when people leave the business. Still sitting in an email, didn't claim it before leaving the business. We're picking it up from there and we're just collecting on their behalf after they left the business. So that's the audit cadence. Now, driving governance. So last year when I came to speak, this presentation basically ended on the previous slide. And what I said is the next step for us in our rebate strategy program is applying governance to it. Because we know we're doing okay, but we think we can do better. And basically from last year, we've stepped away. And we went to go and look at, you know, what drives good governance. And I think really what it came down to is it's not just governance. It's not just applying governance. It's understanding the process. the people, having the system. It's bringing, again, Andrew had mentioned this morning, the technology, the people, and the processes all together, because that's what really gives the big picture. So if you put a governance lens on anything, you've got to consider all of these things as part of your governance. So where do we start? With the big picture in mind. So where do we even start really was the first question, saying, okay, we understand that we've got good principles in place, but how can we take it further? How can we make it more robust? How can we make a strategy out of this instead of it just being another part of the day that I need to do and the vendors going like, oh, it's eye gouging. You know, how do we become more strategic about it? What agreements do we have in place? And I said that was the easy one to answer because we could just pull it out of the system. That was pretty straightforward. Who will be the watchdog? All good and well to have a good process in place in getting it there, but who will be checking this? Who will be seeing if we're actually doing and keeping us honest in this process? We have all these inconsistencies. We've got 20 different ways of negotiating a promotional rebate. We've got 20 different ways of creating a marketing claim. Why do we do things so inconsistently? How can we create an easier, more consistent way of going out to vendors and having that conversation with them? A gazillion forms, guys, and this I do not lie to you. When you onboard a vendor in David Jones, you get lost in a tunnel of forms, and good luck if I see you 3 weeks later coming out the other side. There is like a bazillion forms to populate. I'm like, oh God, how do you do this? And then what's the big picture? Which we spoke about this morning. What do we want to get out of this? So where did we start? We do know that starting at the time of onboarding your vendor is probably the strongest starting block. If you can do your negotiation at the time of onboarding, that is a great place to start. Now, we don't have that luxury always. We've got vendors like the Chanel, the Estée Lauder, the L'Oreals of the world. They've been with us for ages, for yonks, and they're not going to go anywhere. So if we don't do it at the time of start, then just have a regular review cadence and understand that, you know, retail is fluid, things change. We can't just negotiate today and think 5-10 years from now that negotiation is still in place. But regardless of whether it's at the beginning or where it's somewhere in the middle, you've got all this legal documentation playing a role, and then you've got these very creative minds when they go and do the negotiation at play. So what we did as part of the governance project is we created really, really easy to use templates for our teams. Once again, all on a system. We've got something called the merchandise knowledge base. And in this merchandise knowledge base, what we've done is we've created all the legal documentation on a very easy to follow map. Now this is grayed out, guys, because there are some confidential information in there. But this is a live map. People click on it, it takes them to the form that they need to populate. Depending on the type, depending on the type of negotiation it is that you are doing, or the type of onboarding. So this is, as an example, if it's a local vendor that onboards, this is the stream that you follow. If it's a concession vendor, this is the stream. This is the deviation letters that you need to populate. So put all of those, that tunnel of forms that people just got lost in, and half the time missed half the forms because they just didn't know they had to populate it. All of it is an easy-to-use navigatable roadmap, all live links. It also helps them to use the most accurate form instead of the one that's been in their drawer or on their PC since 2015, which happens. The second part was that creativity. Now, again, we spoke about this at Nora last week, and basically explained that having that more consistent negotiation is really important. And I did get feedback from the team going like, but what if a team member negotiates something that's really great and it's not part of your form? Well, if it's a commercial decision that's good for the business, we learn from it and we implement it to the entire business. We're not going to turn away from something that's going to bring commercial benefit. But as a base starting point, we're saying, guys, if you go and create cancellation of markdown or promotional monies, there's 3 ways of doing it. It's either a percentage of intake or a percentage of sale or a cap dollar. That's the only 3 ways you can calculate promotional monies. Don't get creative about it. So in this column for everything, see, driving into somebody else's car. So in this column, we basically say all the different types, and this is 3 pages long, it's just one of the 3. This is the type of rebate that you can negotiate, and this is what we recommend you negotiate based on. So bring in that transactional data that we need to our rebate platform so that, again, there's no inconsistency, no ambiguity when we actually go out and claim the monies from the vendor. So almost too simple, almost too easy. If you think about it from a template point of view, like, my God, why didn't you do that 20 years ago? We didn't think of it. It came out when we started unraveling and untangling all that knots. We went like, hang on, there's so many wormholes here. Let's just make it easier for our teams. And obviously part of this, we didn't just launch it and put it on Merge Knowledge Base. There was a rigorous training program around this as well to make sure that everybody knows about the forms, where to find it, how to navigate it, and how to use it. Who's the watchdog was one of the other questions we had. So it's all good and well. They go out, they're going to go and negotiate. What if they do it wrong? What if they do go and negotiate and they do something that's not a standard term, or they miss a standard term, which, as a matter of fact, one of the standard terms that we've added to our standard terms is late and short. It's something David Jones never did. We're really, really bad at shorts and lates. And this is loss of revenue for us as a business. So one of our new standard terms that we've included for all new negotiation is late and short as part of that standard negotiation. So teams go out, they go and negotiate. From there, they actually send it through to the commercial finance team. So if it's part of standard terms, there's no deviations, there's nothing that's falling short or like really difficult to figure out, it goes to the commercial finance team. The commercial finance team reviews and go like, yep, all good. Or they go like, no, you know what, you need to rework. If it's non-standard, it actually goes straight to our CFO for approval. So anything that doesn't have any of our standard terms in there will go through to CFO, and he needs to actually approve that. So it's quite strict guidelines around that, but that's the only way you're going to kind of get that governance in play is if you do have that policeman, unfortunately. Now, what types of things do we get back that didn't work from a commercial finance point of view, that first layer that's not sitting with the CFO? Most of the people forgot the new short and late. It's new. They haven't done it before. So we would push back from a commercial finance point of view, and every single time we've pushed back, it's come back with shorts and late on the VTT. There was no pushback. The other thing that we got is creative calculation. We push back, going like, there's your guideline. Every single time it's come back with them using the calculations we've given them. So we have had zero pushback or non-compliance when we had to just rejig it and it come back again. CFO is slightly different. I mean, there is a call at that point in time whether we're actually going to continue. So if we then do continue, we put it into our rebate system. So now it's recorded, it's in the system, we can report on it, we can see it, we can pull it out, we can do a whole host of fun things with it. If they don't comply, it needs to go back to the team. The team needs to renegotiate. And then on a very, 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 very small scale, probably less than 5%, we actually do decide to then not pursue the relationship. If we do come to a stalemate, we would then say, okay, we're going to walk away from this agreement. So you can see there's not a lot of, there's 2 layers in there, but without this is probably the biggest question we had at the beginning, saying it's all good and well doing all of this work, but who's going to watch it? So we had to put a approval process in place to make sure that we tick those boxes. Document storage. We briefly spoke about that, but we took it to the next level. So we had a rebate system before, and this is the documents that we would generally store in the rebate system. We would have vendor trading terms in there, and we would have any approvals in there. So that audit piece, really easy to audit because we've got all the documentation in the system. Really easy to know exactly what my vendor trading terms are because we've got it all in the system. Tick, tick. And then we went, but hang on, there's a host of other documentation that is sitting somewhere in the top drawer, in a C drive, on a PC. I kid you not, when I joined David Jones, there was something called the Vault. It took me 6 months to get somebody that still had a password to the Vault to go and pull out the vendor trading terms that we had in the Vault. It was a vault. It was a vault to get into. And we lost complete sight and visibility of our trading terms because it was sitting in this vault, and no one had a password for it anymore. So today we use it for every single point of contact where there's a paper exchange with our vendors, we put it in the system. It makes it a dream to report on, number one. Where's the gentleman with the AI? Can you imagine when we get there and we can put an AI lens on top of that, all that documentation that's sitting in the system? That would be pretty dreamy. That would be awesome. Okay. So again, my little one-stop shop. Everything in its place and a place for everything. It makes it super easy. Once you've got everything in the system, you can start report on stuff. You can report on what you've got in place. You can report on what you've claimed. You can also report on what's generated a claim and what you haven't processed through to a claim. It's very easy for me to go before the end of financial half to the business saying, we've got X million of dollars lying on the table that has not been processed. Get your teams out to go and process it. Because if you don't process it, our friendly audit perfecters is going to take some money off everyone they find that you did not process. So don't be silly about it. Just go process everything that's in the system. Let them find the stuff that's not in the system. And we have been caught. We have been caught that perfecters went like, oh, there's a bunch of stuff that hasn't been processed. We'll just do that, and we need to pay for it. But that's on us because we didn't follow process. Okay. And it also gives me the opportunity to do fun stuff like that, which I did right at the beginning of the session. That data all came out of our system. As I said before, all good and well to have all of this in place. If your people don't know how to do it, how to use the system, how to negotiate, what tools to use, you're pretty useless. So we've got a whole array of training materials available for our teams, whether it's virtual, whether it's video recording. I do a 4-hour onboarding session with every new starter that starts in the business. We have annual negotiation, external people on negotiation coming into the business, helping our teams with negotiation techniques, keeping them fresh, bringing in what's new in the market. So you do need to have an equipped, skilled team to apply all of this. It's not one or the other. It's not just process. It's not just AI. It's not just, it's really bringing all of that together to find your happy place. So where did we go to from there? Instead of untangling the knots, we started connecting the dots. So where do we start? Well, at the beginning. Have good processes and templates and make it easier for the team. Make sure there's something in place where you manage your standard versus variation. Make sure you've got a robust approval process in place to catch the gaps. Have a document storage system is good for that, so that you can report and be audited. And that's where everything kind of starts coming together, and instead of feeling like a muddy mess, you start feeling like a little bit more of a success in your journey. Is this the end for us? No. What did it do for us so far? And sorry, Enable, I know I was not meant to use pink, but I really did want to use, oh gosh, I really did want to use this pink to show, can you see then the land of beauty? At the inception of our project last year, pretty much 10 months ago, because this was November last year. 10 months ago, 40% of our agreements was not loaded to our rebates and deals management system. It didn't mean they weren't there. Some were actually there, it was just not loaded. There was also components of a Mark Jacobs of the world. We had a really strong email agreement with them, and the teams went like, if I go out to them now, I'm gonna get worse terms. I'm like, fine, load your email. There's your governance there, there's your audit trail, they've agreed to it. Go and create your deals based, your evidence is there. Just give us visibility that you've got it in place. So there were components of that, and there were components of just not having trading terms in beauty. And we've got a new GM in beauty that came in. It was a little bit of a passion project for her. So 10 months later, we've only got 10% outstanding. And this is not only for our top 180 vendors. This is for the 950 actively trading vendors. When the team gave me, because I assisted this project as a subject matter expert, but I wasn't part of the project like day to day, so I got this data from them. And I went like, surely this is only the top 200 vendors. She goes like, no, this is all of them. 950 vendors, only 10% outstanding agreements. That's not in the system, and it's either being in negotiation, but it's in negotiation, or we may be exiting trade with them. There's reasons for most of them. But what we do this, we track this month to month to show the progress to our teams, so they've got very clear visibility on where we are. This is now giving us the opportunity, and this is why I got so excited about the future AI, because for us, next really is now about starting to benchmark the agreements with one another, to understand, as an example, we've got a PVH. Any PVH people in the room? We've got a PVH that deals with our women's wear, our kids' wear, our men's wear, and there may be different agreements between the three teams. Is it right? Is it not right? I don't know. That's a commercial decision, but at least we can benchmark it, and we can plot it down and say, After 3, we can clearly see women's wear was the cracker negotiation, yeah, because they've got much better trading terms, as an example. So really be able to compare VTTs with one another. And then the next step is to start benchmarking them. And then once we have a benchmark, we can then equip our team to go out and do better negotiation to those benchmarks. And that is where AI will play such a major role. I really got excited with the previous presentation because what seems impossible for us at this point in time to try and analyze all of that data may become significantly easier if we have that. So that's the David Jones journey, and how we love our rebate strategy and how we have brought governance into driving stronger rebate strategies in the business. Thank you.